We are back. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project. I'm Rob Kalwarowsky, and as always, the yang to my yin, kicking off 2023. Well, actually in real recording world. We're actually recording in 2023 now. Susan Hobson. Susan, how are you?
I am so fired up and excited to be here in 2023. I got all kinds of feels going on in my intuition about this year. I think there's so many exciting things that are going to be showing up on the play here in 2023. How about you, buddy? How's this year feeling to you so far?
Yeah, I feel the same way. And obviously we're getting feedback already about episode 100 from last week.
Oh, yeah.
Spoiler alert, we recorded that one before 2023. But yeah, some incredible feedback. And even Matt Zeman just commented and said, there's not a lot of folks who would be able to draw the line through the experts that were on the show. Folks from, Dick Schwartz, who's, one of the top psychologists in the world, to, Wes, who's the CIO at IDEO, to Matt Zeman, who's a psychedelic expert, and then Zach and David Irvine, who are both leadership coaches and experts. And it's incredible because, obviously we see it, and I just love to curate that kind of discussion.
Yes, I know. That's one of our favorite things to do here at the Leadership Launchpad Project. I think that panel was really reflective of what Leadership 2.0 is all about, right? It's really not about one single entry point or modality in terms of leadership development and training. We're curating all these top experts from all these seemingly different fields because they all bring a really important facet to the table, right? In terms of what it truly requires here in 2023 to be a 2.0 leader.
Yeah, I love it. And it's funny, right? So obviously I keep doing a lot of the reading and articles and digging for research. And I found a research paper literally from 2010. So this is, right? It's 2023 now. So this is 13 years ago. There's no excuse for this. Right. Mm-hmm. And this paper was done by a company who works in private equity, and they basically consult for private equity companies in building and helping them select companies to invest in. And they did it in partnership with Cornell. So it's actually pretty legitimate. And they followed 72 executives, and these executives worked from companies worth, I think it was around $5 million up to $5 billion. So the sizes were like Fortune 100 to small size business. And they found that one of the top criteria that makes these executives successful was self-awareness and interpersonal skills.
Ooh, all the way back in 2010.
Right?
Yeah, it's like a lot of the themes that we've seen on the show and the interviews that we have curated with these experts, right? I think we were talking about this even in episode 100 when David Irvine was talking about the vertical versus the horizontal. I feel like we got to get out of this horizontal plane with our leadership development and training. These ideas are not new, folks, right? Like all these human-centric practices are not new. It's just the application and the integration of these practices, which is what makes our growth and our learning vertical, right? It seems to be here in 2023 still a challenge, according to those experts we curated on show 100.
And that's the big thing, right? Is Dave was talking about that horizontal, and it's great to listen to the podcast, and it's great to go out there and read another book. And, now that we do the show, everyone sends us a book. So we have massive amounts of books, right? But it's very much different to bring that into your day-to-day and your own integration of who you are. And, it's very much like the data's there. And, study after study, like 2010 people, right? And then there was those other studies that were 26 years about financial returns and all this stuff. And And yet we still have folks that are going out there and practicing 1.0 leadership, right?
Mhm.
And if from the same paper, they say like, quote unquote, bully traits that are often seen as part of business building culture were typically signs of incompetence and lack of strategic intellect. Right. And so we've talked about asshole bosses. I mean, even
Mhm.
another prime example, like we talked with Steph about
Mhm.
Elon Musk and
Mhm.
what's come out recently there.
Mhm.
Elon's lost $200 billion net worth. He's the first person in history to have done so. And right now at Twitter, they've laid off around 75% of their staff since it started. They stopped paying vendors and contractors. And since that happened, the janitorial staff hasn't been working. They
Oh
went on
my
strike,
gosh.
and now offices are unclean. There's apparently a lot of odors, and people are bringing in their own toilet paper.
So literally, not only a mentally and emotional toxic waste dump in terms of the 1.0 leadership practices coming out of that man since he stepped up and took charge of Twitter, right? But physically too, by the sounds of it, stanky.
And it's something that, like, I had a manager who wanted to cut coffee, and that would have been in like 2012. And I was like, do
Mm-hmm.
not do this. And it's like, if we talk about like what Zach talks about, which is like people mattering, and we talk
Mm-hmm.
about like fundamentals of trust and psych safety is care,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like, if I have to work in a dirty environment where I have to bring in my own supplies, that shows a lack of care, which destroys trust,
Mm-hmm.
and a lack of me mattering, which
Mm-hmm.
destroys my basically my picture of myself as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I would not put up for it. And so I think that
Yeah.
that's where folks are starting to really see the difference between, yes, like going to this like cost zero and everyone has to prove their value is like one thing, but taking it all the way to the extreme of like, we're not cleaning the offices anymore
Or
is,
providing you with
is,
toilet paper. Oh my
yeah, it's a
God.
little bit too far.
It's so metaphoric, though, right? For the brain that's making those decisions, that's at the helm. And I think last year we were looking at how, I think it was Fast Company, right? Came out with that article in January saying 2022 is the year of purpose in business, right? Like that was what we saw coming out of this pandemic. What did Zach call it, in terms of apocalyptic from the Greek root, right? To uncover that really was a lot of what was uncovered, right? Is that we saw a lot of people no longer willing to tolerate toxic environments and conditions like that, right? People awakening to how important their health and well-being is in the context of a world pandemic. So if last year was the year of purpose in business where everybody was really stepping back to ask themselves, like, what's my purpose? Naturally 2023 is going to be the year where they start to take action and mobilize in that movement towards organizations that not only create conditions for their people to matter, right, but ultimately that give them the opportunity to work in more meaningful ways. And that to me is where we're at in 2023 when we're looking out over this horizon. And you and I are sitting here thinking about the trends and where we're at and how far we've come. I think that really is the gap still, right? Is like as much as people have been going on these missions to learn about the changes that are required here in 2023 from a leadership perspective. Now, I think they're going to be looking for that integrity, right? They're going to be looking for leaders and organizations that actually are going to be providing the right conditions for them to really be able to step into their purpose and play their biggest impact game.
I totally agree. And that's where I think this moment of time is we're starting to see, and I sent you an article yesterday that was talking about it, right? Where it was like, they were talking about this engineering, this woman who works in engineering, and she basically decided like, I'm not working weekends or evenings anymore. And she asked for a salary review and they gave her 12.5% raise. And the article is basically talking about how managers are now frustrated and they're moving their jobs overseas because Americans don't want to work hard anymore. And it even went on to, I don't know if you read it, but the end of the article is talking about one of the owners of, or the founders of Home Depot, who's a 93-year-old billionaire. Yeah. And he was saying a lot of incredibly harsh things about people. They don't want to work and they're lazy and they're stupid and they're this and that. And it's like the culture has changed, you know, and let's not talk about the fact that that guy got rich off of people working minimum wage, and that minimum wage hasn't even kept up with inflation. And so folks who are working for him today can't even pay their bills and eat and do all this stuff while he's like, anyways.
Off in his ivory tower.
We'll ignore that
cashing
part,
them checks.
right? But it's like this element that like doing the self-work and setting boundaries is bad, and that managers want to cut costs and they want to move jobs overseas and get cheaper workers who will do anything. We've lost this element of care. And Wes was talking about bringing love into the workplace. And I think that that's why we go into this pocket of psychology and IFS and bringing in psychedelics, is it opens up our minds to the possibility that things could be different. And like, I totally understand that if I was Elon Musk and I lost $200 billion, I would be gripped as hell to keep every last dime I could possibly keep. And that's because our brain shuts down and it becomes solely focused on maintaining. And what we talk about with Matt and with David Drapkin and Seb, and it's the ability for psychedelics to open up perspective and allow ourselves to not only see ourselves and the value we bring, but see our impact on others, and gets through that protector mode to find big S self. And that's why we've started to explore those avenues, both on the podcast and with some of the programs we're going to be doing. This is how we can create change and steps towards a future that benefits everyone, not just the elite few.
Yeah, this is the shift in consciousness that's going on right now, right? The psychedelic renaissance, it's called, is just one example of the awakening, right? Like, I think we now know better. We know that there's a better way. There's examples of this in the world popping up left, right, and center, right? And the more people continue to heal and grow and do that work, especially our leaders, the more we're creating those types of environments and conditions for people to thrive in the context of work, the more traction that's going to get, right? And the more people are going to start to actually, perform that mass exodus from the 1.0 environments they feel stuck in. We feel stuck in that. And that's why a lot of these leaders who are used to being able to make money in those ways that create suffering in the lives of the people that are actually on the front lines, is because forever that was the only way. But now what is different, and this is what we need our leaders to understand, what's different now is that we actually have proven the model works, right? So yes, you may be taking more time for yourself and taking care of your needs and having some flexible work and doing all of that. But who's to say that that does not lead to the greatest innovation that this world has ever seen? That great innovation is not coming from scarcity, folks. It's not coming from a deficit. So I know Gen Z's got this figured out. I know Wes was talking about that because he sees a lot of that, right? And his teams and the people he works with is like, they're not working for a paycheck. So let's go. If you're not on this mission, if you're not taking action, because this is a journey. And that's the other thing that we keep weaving into this podcast so that people have an appreciation and a respect, right? This takes time. This does take investment, right? From an energy perspective. But ultimately, yeah, now's the time to start making those investments, because this shift in consciousness is absolutely taken place. That's been the greatest silver lining of all of this disruption in the world.
Yeah. And that journey is deliberate daily practice. And then also having a guide or a mentor or a coach or a therapist or all of the above,
Mhm.
right? And it's something that I sort of realized how much it takes as I've been in some of these programs and coach folks. And often we get folks in the door that are too busy to do the work. So
Mhm.
they don't do the work. So then they're too busy to do the work. And it's
Mhm.
this vicious circle.
Mhm.
And it takes that stepping back that David talks about, where
Mhm.
you check in with yourself every day and you give yourself time without the emails and the phone calls and the text messages and all the stuff, to
Mhm.
just be at peace and check in with you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's where you can start to find those innovations or find those things that you can do that will make you happier, your people happier, but also it does improve productivity and innovation and profitability and all the stuff you want.
Mhm.
But it starts with, you have to put a stop to this circle, this cycle of I gotta do, gotta do, gotta do, gotta do, gotta do.
Mhm. The autopilot, right? That's what we said was the best part of this whole lockdowns. The hamster wheels out of service, high achievers, right? Which gave us this incredible opportunity to do something with that access time and space. But now we're back on full speed ahead mode, right? Especially here in January is when we say we're going to hit the ground running in January, because yeah, I feel like this is a fresh, clean slate of ice. And this is where we start to think about our visions and our missions and our whys. And we start to put all of that planning into place so things can get really busy again. And I know we've been talking a lot about burnout too, right? It's the highest it's ever been. 80% report on the workforce, right? That they've experienced burnout in the last year. So it is definitely still a problem post-pandemic.
Yep.
Right? Like we have to integrate the things that we actually were able to find in our consciousness when we actually took time to slow down and took time to go inward and took time to start doing that work. So I think that's definitely the call that was heard loud and clear coming off show 100. I think that was unanimous, right? Across all boards there in our panel, is that really is where it begins. But then Zach brought up an interesting point, right? It's really hard to put healthy people into unhealthy conditions and have them stay healthy, right? So I think this is the other aspect. Now that we've done that inner work and we've started to go on that journey, yeah, I think it's really important that you do have like-minded people around you somewhere supporting you on that journey, somewhere along the way of your day-to-day autopilot, which is a beast. You have somebody that's going to hold you accountable to all of what you're cooking up and a brewing on here at the start of the year. And so I think, like, as much as we're talking about this year being the year of action, right? Like taking action, applying the things that we're learning about so we can integrate them into our being so that becomes a part of what's showing up on our autopilot. I think we're also going to see that this is the year of community.
I totally agree. Right. And it is like bringing it back to the self and the psychology aspect to it, right? Is like we can work on ourself, right? We can go
Mm-hmm.
in, we can do IFS therapy, EMDR therapy, all the therapies, right? We can do the psychedelics, we can do all that stuff. And yes, it will reduce the amount of triggers you have every day. It'll reduce your, your states that are, we call them red states, right? Or your
Mm-hmm.
red flag emotions,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if you're in an environment that is constantly on you,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's your boss, your call, like your typically what happens, and I can say this because I was there, right? Is like
Yeah.
you have an asshole boss, and then all the people around you are negative. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's all you talk about. Like all your breaks,
Mm-hmm.
it's like this guy sucks, work sucks, like it's all bad. And then that
Mm-hmm.
starts to follow you everywhere. And that's where, like you saw me, Susan, when I walked in your door, or like we have clients that walk in our door with the same issues, right? Is like, there's no escape from this. And it becomes part of just how you are. And then in my case, like I couldn't even do the work. I was so gummed up in the trauma of the day. And once you can pull apart these environments and get out of them into an environment where folks are supportive and they're not triggering you and they're helping you and supporting you and getting you on your growth path, it's like there's the switch, and you can see the painting I have, right? It's that metamorphosis from the caterpillar to the butterfly.
Amen.
And that's where it's curating your, was it Zig Ziglar? Someone said, like, you're the 5 people you spend the most time with.
The law of association.
It's that finding those 5 people that you can spend time with who are going to help you get to that next level.
Yeah, this is why we created locker rooms, right? This is our whole understanding coming out of sports. What was so obvious to us was that a big integral aspect of that model of excellence, the higher you climb, like we saw this in the dressing rooms that we were in, like that community around us, holding us accountable, challenging us outside our comfort zone, right? Calling us on our stuff or excuses or whatever, celebrating our wins and our progress and all of that, propping us up when we needed it. That is a container for max growth and max realization of potential, right? So yeah, whether you're getting that in the context of where you're at, I hope and I pray that you're in that environment professionally. I really do. But if you're not, I think that's what we're suggesting needs to be part of your game plan here for 2023 is where are you going to curate that community? Where are you going to be able to ensure that you have that type of healthy condition that's really going to help you to sort out whether or not you're showing up and playing all out for the right people, for the right mission, for the right purpose.
I love that. And I mean, obviously, Susan, the last thing we should leave folks with is something we've talked about on the show before with Zach, but we can talk about it in a sense of how we normally talk about it, right? Is what legacy do you want to leave on the world, and what does that look like for you? And Zach talks about it in a sense of like I think your kid is at your funeral or something.
That's right.
And they're asking you, who was that guy? Right? And for us, we talk about, sitting on your porch and in a rocking chair and watching or thinking back about your life and watching your kids or your dog or whatever.
and asking yourself, how do I know that I made it count? Because I guarantee, like, I used to always have that right in my stall after big games where I'd be like, okay, like, did I do the thing? Did I play all out? Did I empty the gas tank or did I have more to give? I hated that feeling sitting there knowing, oh my gosh, I had more to give and I didn't give it. So that to me is like how I work that legacy factor, Joe, right? Is if I'm in that rocking chair, how do I know I made it count? How do I know I played all out in the ways that matter to me, in the ways that not only do I want to be remembered, but in ways that continue to have a ripple effect long beyond the years that I'm actually here doing this thing.
I love it. And so, folks, obviously wrapping up, please hit subscribe to Leadership Launchpad Project on your favorite podcast platform. We're also on YouTube if you want to subscribe to us there. Head on over to elitehighperformance.com for all your leadership development needs and keynote speaking and all the programs that we have there. And I'd love to put this out to folks. Like we always ask this to every guest, right? Is what's the legacy you want to leave? And we would love if you either dropped what legacy you want to have in one of the comments that we post, or you're welcome to email me with your legacy, rob@elitehighperformance.com. We would love to hear from you about that because we'd love to support you in any way we can. So, Susan, is
Oh,
there anything
yeah.
you want to leave folks with today?
I just think that speaks volumes to where we're at here at the start of the year in our brainstorming, right, buddy? I think we have a real desire to get to know our audience more. Like a real strong desire to engage with all of you out there so we actually can run alongside you on that mission that you're trying to go on so that we can show up in service to your growth and your impact game. So, yeah, please. I know we ask questions on here like a lot, but now I think in 2023, you're going to see us lean in even more to create those opportunities for us to get to know you and know about the mission that you're on and who it is that you're trying to serve. So, I love that. Last thing I want to say is just, yeah, if you haven't played in one of our locker rooms, come play in one of our locker rooms. Come get a taste of what it is that we're talking about. That is the method to this madness, right? In terms of how Rob and I have learned to optimize our potential and how we set leaders up every single day to do the same for their peeps. I know we're going to have some new opportunities rolling out this year in 2023. Stay tuned for that in terms of some of how you can engage on a more personal, intimate level with us. But yeah, we've got lots of opportunities. So if you're in a space right now where you have identified what this year is all about to you, and you're taking time to see the gap between where you are and where you want to land when the clock strikes midnight on 23, then please go to the website, check it out. We've got all kinds of different really exciting locker room opportunities that are going on. So yeah, we'd love for you to be a part of that.
I love that. And for me, I have a quote here from Max Carver, and he says, "Empathy is the starting point for creating a community and taking action. It's the impetus for creating change."
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're at here in January of 2023, is we've seen the data on what's not working. And we've started to see the data on what is working. And now it's about taking that legacy that you want to leave and stepping back into what can I do today or this year that will help me on my path to leaving that legacy. So find that community for you. Reach out to us. I'd love to hear your legacy. Rob at EliteHighPerformance.com. Hit subscribe to the podcast. Check out Elite High Performance. And stay tuned for a bunch more incredible guests and incredible episodes. Susan, thank you so much for being on this journey with me.
Nowhere I would rather be than sitting in this co-pilot and chair with you, buddy. And I can hardly wait for 2023.
For episode 250.
I'm already there, buddy. I'm already there. And then lastly, thank you to our audience. Thank you for helping us get to number 4 leadership podcast in Canada. Thank you for tuning in all these episodes. And thank you for helping to be a part of us on this mission to change the way the game of life and business is being played forever. It's working. We're doing it. And we're so grateful to have you along for this ride too.
Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.